Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to crack some Throne of Eldraine packs and build a sealed deck. This is going to be the second of two sealed decks that I am building, and we will get right to it. Pack number one, we get a food, a mountain, Castle Garenbrig, Thunderous Snapper, Once and Future, Slaying Fire, Ardenvale Tactician, Forever Young, Redcap Riders, Ogre Errant, Jousting Dummy, Wolf's Quarry, Didn't Say Please, Knight of the Keep, Silverflame Ritual, and Tome Raider. Pack 2, we have a Weaselback Redcap, a Prized Griffin, Mantle of Tides, Raging Redcap, Garenbrig Carver, Festive Funeral, Signpost Scarecrow, Unexplained Vision, Knight of the Keep, Redcap Raiders, Shambling Suit, Trail of Crumbs, Sir Conrad the Grim, Wishclaw Talisman, a Forest and a Mouse. Now we have a Runaway Together, Embryo Paladin, Sporecap Spider, Malevolent Noble, a Barrow Witches, Corridor Monitor, Garenbrig Paladin, Dwarven Mine, Weapon Rack, Wandermare, Flaxen Intruder, Bog Noddy, Questing Beast, a Foil Swamp, a Mountain, and a Add card. The next one gives us a Giant Token, an Island, Shining Armor, Black Lance Paragon, Sir Eleanor the Discerning, a Steel Claw Lance, a fancy version of Animating Fairy, Lash of Thorns, a Flutterfox, Scorching Dragonfire, a Tuinveiled Treefolk, Roving Keep, Ardenvale Paladin, Queen of Ice, Corridor Monitor, and Youthful Knight. I also forgot to mention the Shining Armor is literally shining, it's a foil. Alright, now we have a Foreboding Fruit, Thrill of Possibility, Charmed Sleep, Festive Funeral, Queen of Ice, Lonesome Unicorn, Ginger Brute, Gingerbread Cabin, Garenbrig Carver, Elite Headhunter, a Spectre's Shriek, a Deathless Knight, a Folio of Fancies, a Foil Barge Inn, a Plains, and a Human Cleric. The last pack gets us a Charmed Sleep, a Festive Funeral, Searing Barrage, Crashing Drawbridge, Crystal Slipper, Searing Cauldron, Wolf's Quarry, Corridor Monitor, Prized Griffin, Signpost Scarecrow, Embryo Shieldbreaker, Heraldic Banner, Lock Dragon, a Castle Embryo, a Plains, and a Boar token. And now that we've looked at everything, we're going to just take a quick look at our colors here and evaluate them. White is looking pretty scant in terms of total number of cards, but maybe they'll be good. We have a Prized Griffin, which is a fine, if not exciting, game ender. We have a Lonesome Unicorn, which can be a decent 2-for-1 body. A Youthful Knight, which is a nice aggressive creature. An Ardenvale Paladin, which is an okay defensive creature. Flutterfox can be okay as long as you have artifacts or enchantments. Then it gets nice and airborne, but otherwise it's just a 2-2. Shining Armor, even though it's a foil, is not terribly exciting. Neither is Knight of the Keep. Another Prized Griffin. Silverflame Ritual is good if you can go wide and go small, but I think it's only really good if that's the case. And I don't know if we're putting together that deck. We have another Knight of the Keep, and Ardenvale Tactician I like a lot because of its utility in terms of tapping down your opponent's creatures and then flying in for some damage. So I think that white has pretty much all creatures, and the creatures are decent here, so there is some potential for it to be an okay body here. With blue, you get a Corridor Monitor, which is okay in the right deck, but I don't know if it's going to be the right deck. We have Charmed Sleep, which is a decent blue removal spell. Folio of Fancies is a good game ender here, and it gets you a bit of card advantage, so it's not the worst thing in the world. We have Queen of Ice, which is a nice way to slow down your opponent. Another Charmed Sleep, another Corridor Monitor, another Queen of Ice, and an Animating Fairy, which can turn your artifacts into creatures, which isn't the worst thing in the world. And it's also a flyer, so even if it doesn't do that, it's actually quite good. We have plenty of artifacts that we could turn into two things, so that's something to keep in mind. Sir Eleanor is quite good, draws you cards, and then is powerful as long as you have cards in your hand. So I like that a lot. We have another quarter monitor. Run Away Together is alright interaction, especially if you want to be able to reuse one of your own creatures or abilities. So something to keep in mind, but is not a high pick. I like Unexplained Vision okay. It does let you draw some cards, and it's good in the late game, but it is a very expensive card draw. So I don't know how much I like it, but it is an okay refill in the late game. Mantle of Tides is good if you are in the draw 2 deck. We don't see too much support for that here, except for Sir Eleonora, so I'm not high on that one. Tome Raider, I guess, is the support for it, and I do like Tome Raider just because it replaces itself while creating a body. Didn't Stay Pleased is an alright counterspell. Not high on the list, but if you are looking for counterspells, this may be the way to do it. I think blue is okay here. We actually have some removal, we have some decent creatures, and I think that there is a potential for this to become something, but we want to hold on and see what the synergies are with the other colors here. With black, we have Festive Funeral, which is an okay removal spell. A bit expensive, we don't want a ton of them. We have Spectre Shriek, which is best as a sideboard card to remove good cards from your opponent's hand. Another Festive Funeral. They're not as good in multiples. Foreboding Fruit is actually pretty good in terms of just being able to draw cards, so I like that one. We have Lash of Thorns, which is probably not the best combat trick, but it can work. Black Lens Paragon is a good combat trick in the sense that you can make one of your knights trade with your opponent. So that's great. I like Bognaughty too. I think that if you can get the food deck going, this is pretty strong. And even if you can't, it flies pretty well. And so I like it a lot. Barrow Witches is good if you're playing knights, and only if you're playing knights. So that's something to keep in mind. If we will keep an eye out for the number of knights that we have. Benevolent Noble is good if you have lots of things to sacrifice. And it's still a 2/2 for 2, so it's not the worst thing in the world. We're not high on it, but I think a little better than Barrow Witches in general. Wishclaw Talisman is not terribly good. I mean, searching your deck in limited is less useful unless you're like really looking for an answer or something. So, and then your opponent gets to do it on the next turn. So I'm not high on this card, and I don't think I would start it unless there is some bomb in my deck that I really had to find. Sir Conrad the Grim, on the other hand, is very good uncommon. It just is able to deal damage by itself and is a good-sized body, so I like it a lot. We have another Festive Funeral, lots of Festive Funerals here, and Forever Young, which I guess replaces cards and gets you one of the cards that you want back, so maybe it is okay, especially if you have bombs, but I think I don't like it as much. And I think black is okay. We have some decent cards at the top and some removal here, although it's very expensive removal. I wouldn't want most of it. And then it really weakens out at the bottom here. And we have to remember that black will also get us access to these cards here, whereas white would get us access to the Wandermare, which is good in the Adventures deck, and then blue would get us access to the Thunder Snapper and the Lock Dragon. So those are all things that we can keep in mind here. Now we're looking at red. We have Castle Embreth, which is a nice little bonus in terms of giving your aggressive deck some extra stats. We have the Embreth Shieldbreaker, which is a pretty good card in the sense that even if you don't end up using its sorcery ability, it can incidentally get very good. I think I would probably start one just because that there are a good number of artifacts in the set. Crystal Slipper can be good in the right deck, in a nice aggressive deck where you just want to get your creatures equipped and start attacking. So I would consider it. Searing Barrage is removal. Expensive removal, but it's removal. Bargain is only really good if you're playing a more aggressive deck. Throw a possibility. I guess you can use it as like a 23rd card to fix your late draws. Scorching Dragonfire is probably the better removal here. Dwarven Mine can be okay if you have enough mountains, so that's something to keep in mind. Get it? Keep in mind. It's basically a free card anyways, so I would not play it in general. We have the Embryo Paladin, which is, I think, okay. It's very aggressive. You do want to have a deck that is just trying to beat down on your opponent in order to play it, but this is something to keep in mind. The Red Cap Raiders, I think, is a little better as long as you have non-humans, because it gets a little stronger. So yeah, something I could consider in the right deck. We have Raging Redcap, which is good with equipment, like the Crystal Slipper. If we have enough equipment, then I would play it higher. Right now, we don't have a lot, just the Crystal Slipper. Ogre Errant is, I think, as far as bodies go, it's one of the better, like, standard ground bodies in red. And so I would want to keep that. We have another Redcap Raiders, so that's alright. Slaying Fire is a good removal spell, probably even better than Scorching Dragonfire, but it's hard to say because Scorching Dragonfire is always 3 for 2, whereas this is sometimes 3, sometimes 4, but this can go to the face. So I like Slaying Fire, and I think that makes red a pretty good color here. We have removal, we have some decent aggressive bodies, and if we want to get aggressive, then we have a lot of options. We have green, we have a Wolf's Quarry, which I don't know how much I like this. It's expensive for 3 creatures that creates food when they die. And they're 1/1, so I'm not high on that. Garenbrig Carver is alright in terms of additional abilities. The Gingerbread Cabin can be okay if you're playing green. It does get you food, and maybe food's what you want. Two-Enveloped Treefolk is alright. It buffs one of your creatures and becomes a decent creature by itself. Questing Beast is a house. A 4/4 Vigilance Death Touch with haste that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And combat damage that will be dealt by creatures you control can't be prevented. That's going to not matter as much here. And then it can kill off Planeswalkers if you have to deal with them. But just a 4/4 Vigilance Death Touch haste is enough to make you really, really want to play green. Flaxen Intruder is much less good. I think the top part where it creates 3 green bear tokens is better than the bottom part where it has to deal combat damage to destroy an artifact or enchantment. I think that makes it a fairly low pick here. We have Garenbrig Paladin, which is a decent body, especially if you can get the Adamant going. I don't think it's high pick, but is an interesting choice here. Sporecap Spider is defensive. I think it's more of a sideboard tech when your opponent has flyers and you need to block them, but even then, it can't really kill them very well, so I'm not high on this card. The Trail of Crumbs can be good if you have food, and so if you're playing the food deck, I would want to play this, but if you're not, then I don't know that I would want to play it. So, not high on that card. But we have some food options here, so it's not the worst thing right now. We have Garenbrig Carver, which is okay, and then another Wolf's Quarry, and maybe that's where I want to do food if I can ramp into it, but it's not a great card. Once in Future is one way to get cards back from your graveyard to your hand. I don't know how good this is unless you really have strong cards, and with green, I guess because of the Questing Beast, it is something that we really do want to consider putting here because we can get it back to our hand. And then Castle of Garenbrig, I think, is not terribly good because it's a ramp, and I don't know if we have much that we're ramping to except maybe these Wolf's Quarries, and do we really want to ramp up Wolf's Quarries? I don't know. So let's keep that in mind as an option. I mean, we can still play it because it's fine, and that is green. And then we have our artifacts here. We have Heraldic Banner, which is good if you go hard on one color. Signpost Scarecrow will help you fix. Scalding Cauldron is removal when you need it. Crashing Drawbridge can be good in an aggressive deck, but I don't know because it can't attack on its own. I like Gingerbread quite a bit. It's a great equipment carrier, and its ability to be hard to block is very good. The Roving Keep is just really expensive. I don't think I would like this in most decks just because it can't attack even after you cast it, so not high on that. I don't really like Weapon Rack. It's too expensive and too slow. Shambling Suit can be okay if you have a lot of artifacts. We do have a good number of options here, but I don't know if it's enough to put it in. I guess we'll look at the artifacts at the end and decide there. Jousting Dummy is good if you need more knights, and only in that circumstance. And that is that. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to see which of these color combinations work best. With each of these hybrid cards, it needs to be both colors. Like, there's no way we're going to splash that. We can splash the Water Mirror or the Steelclaw Lance, so that's something to keep in mind. But let's go ahead and just start by putting the hybrid cards together in their respective color pairs and see where that goes. So we'll go ahead and start with left to right, just because that's how we are, and we'll start with the Lock Dragons red and blue decks. Alright, in terms of payoffs here, we have the animating fairy that can animate the folio and the mantle and the crystal slipper. The non-human payoff is kind of there. There's not a ton of humans in this deck, so the Red Cat Raiders can be okay. The Lock Dragon is a card drawer, I believe. Yeah, if you may discard a card whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks to draw a card, so you can loot or rummage specifically with this card, which can get you that second card to trigger the Mantle of Tides effect, but that's the only thing that really gets any benefit from the extra card draw. I mean, everybody likes drawing cards, but, you know, rummaging through your cards, that's the only one that really gets a benefit from that. There are not a lot of knights here, and so, and I don't, know if we even want to play all of these knights, so I don't know how good Ogre Errant is going to be in this deck. There's an okay amount of removal here, so this is looking to be an okay deck. It's not a great deck. It's a bit on the slow side. The cards are sort of in opposition of what each wants to do, and so I'm not high on this deck. I wouldn't play it first choice, but it is an option for us. Let's go ahead and keep blue, but switch in green for red. Alright, so there's not a lot of ramp here. I mean, the corridor monitors are like really bad ramp, and there's not a lot of food here, so the Trail of Clumps is out. We don't want to play the Flaxen Intruder in most cases, because we don't really have the ramp to get there. Because we don't have ramp, I'm not really on these Wolf's Quarries. The Thunderous Snapper is good if you can cast the expensive cards, but there's not a ton of expensive cards that we can cast here. And green is a little bit light on everything on the bottom, and so we're really hoping for the Corridor Monitors and the Queens of Ice to like hold the deck down until we can cast the Garenbrig Paladins or the Truenvale Treefolks or the Sir Eleonoras. And the Questing Beast is really strong, but I don't know that it's good enough to hold this particular deck together, especially with the Thunder Snapper being a bit weak because there's just not a lot of expensive things to cast and not many ways to ramp up there. So I think that the blue-green deck is out. So as long as we're on green here, we'll try the green-black deck. And I think blue is out, but we'll keep this in mind. I think that the red-blue deck had something going on, even if it wasn't great. Alright, the big problem with this package here is that the deck is really weighted to expensive cards, and it has very little to do in the early game, and so I think it's just going to get run over and die. I mean, we can add some of these random, like, artifacts in to try to hold the ground, but I don't think that's going to be enough to hold this deck together. I like some of the synergies here, but I just don't think that it's enough on its own. The cards that I'm definitely not using are Wishclaw Talisman. We're not using the Flaxen Intruder. Probably not using either of these. And that just reduces the bottom. The Barrow Witches are not going to get played. We don't have enough Knights. I guess the Garenbrig Carvers can be used. These are supposed to hold the ground down. I don't think that this is going to work, especially with, all the removal is expensive here. So I think green-black is out. Let's go ahead and try green-white since we have a Wandermare. Alright, I want to like this deck, but I don't. The Wandermare benefits off of adventures, and we have, like 3 adventure cards here? So that's not what we're trying to do. There's no way to ramp into the 6-drop, so we're not really playing that. The Wolf's Quarry don't work very well in this deck anyways. And then we have, just a bunch of blah knights to hold on. We don't even have any removal in this deck, so you're just trying to hope that your tricks in the Garenbrig Carver gets you there. I think that this is a straight up no, and I think white is probably too shallow to play. So let's put this one away, and then look at our last color pair in red and black. Alright, in terms of creatures, this is okay. It's not like a creature heavy deck, and we have a decent amount of removal, but some of it's very expensive. So let's make some immediate cuts. We're not playing the Spectre Shriek. We're probably not playing the Lash. We're not going to be playing the Wishclaw Talisman. We'll probably not play all of the Festive Funerals. We finally have enough knights that the Barrow Witches actually make sense. The Bognati is not terribly good, but at least we can get some food from the Foreboding Fruit. And it looks like that's it. So maybe this is not the strongest combination here either. It's possible that we will forego the multicolor cards and try to make a deck that is more suited towards a single color. It's possible that maybe red-green might work because of the combination of numbers here. This is a little bit harder here. But even though there is something of a deck here, it just doesn't have a lot of finishing power. And so I don't love this. I mean, I like the removal. I think red is strong and green is strong. So I think maybe we can just like look at the combination of them and see if that might work. Alright, you know, this is not that good either. I mean, I like the Questing Beast. It's just an expensive deck with no ramp. And maybe we're just trying to hold out with just like the most random cards. I mean, we're not playing Flaxen Intruder. This is not a Trail of Crumbs deck. I feel like this is just not strong enough. And as much as I want Questing Beast, is this good enough to play Questing Beast? I guess the Castle Garenbrig is our ramp, but you can't even cast the Wolf's Core using its ability. I mean, this is getting us food that we don't need. And maybe we can use the True Unveiled Treefolk to pump one of the smaller creatures, but I don't think it's good enough. Alright, so what if we go red-white? Now this is kind of looking like it could be a deck here. I'm not going to be playing this. There's some knight synergies going on here. The Red Cap Raiders are a little bit worse in this deck because there's a lot of humans thanks to the infusion of white. We're not playing the Shining Armor. But, you know, there's a bit of a curve here. A thing that this deck is trying to do, if it can go wide enough, the Silver Flame Ritual can actually be good. Heraldic Banner could pump all of a color, whether it's white or red. It's a bit even, and the artifacts don't help that. It leaves me thinking that I don't think it's good enough. So, what does that mean? Does that put us back into red and blue as the color pair here? I don't know that there's a lot of strong synergy otherwise that we're looking at here. So let's go back to that. Alright, there is an interesting synergy between the Animating Fairy and the Weapon Rack, because this enters with 3+1/+1 counters. This turns this into a 7/7 that we can distribute the counters if we want. It's something to keep in mind. I don't think it's necessarily worth putting the Weapon Rack in for, but I mean, it's not completely out of place here. I think this gives us the most options. So let's make some cuts then. We don't have a lot of payoffs for the extra draw things, other than the Mantle of Tides. And I don't know that it's good enough to play the Mantle. I think we can cut the Banner, but this is a ton of cards. We'll probably cut the Cauldron. I don't think these Corridor Monarchs are doing a lot. I guess they're just kind of blocking for a while. We'll take out one of these. I think we're not aggressive enough to be playing Barge in. I don't know that we want a Didn't Say Please in this particular deck. We're not terribly controlling. We have too many non-creature spells here, I think. I don't think the draw the second card thing is actually that good. We'll ditch the Mantle. And then we're going to ditch anything that is just really for that purpose. So Thrill of Possibility can go. I think the Animating Fairy is fine as a flyer, so we don't really have to work too hard to get the artifact synergy going. I think we can cut the Runaway together. And I'm doing so because it can't bounce a Weapon Rack. I think we can cut a Queen of Ice. Being a human, it sort of weakens what it's doing, and there's no other synergy. In fact, we'll cut them all. We'll cut the Embryo Paladin as well. And maybe this is the deck. And I like keeping the Crystal Slipper and the Weapon Rack specifically because Raging Redcap can benefit from that. And Ogre Errant works well with that. So I think that this is going to be the deck. Let me just make sure that the numbers are correct here. This is 23 cards. And this is the curve. Not too expensive. But I think we have a good enough thickness that we want to keep at 17 lands. And we have 12 blue symbols, 10 red symbols. So we want maybe a 9-8 split. So 6 more mountains and 9 islands. Here are 9 islands and 6 mountains, making for 9 and 8. And I guess this is the deck. I'm not excited about it, but I think it might be able to do a thing, so we will hold on to it and hope that it works out. Let me know what your thoughts were about the opens and the deck building process. If you thought that it was a mistake to not play Questing Beast, even though green was a little bit thin, let me know in the comments. If you found this video helpful or enjoyable, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.